The great meeting hall of Concordia Prime buzzed with alien voices. Strange sounds filled the air, clicking noises from the insect-like Krex, musical tones from the crystal beings called Vorth, and chemical smells that served as words for the gas cloud Nethari. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered for one purpose: to deal with the human problem. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his reptilian scales shifting colors as he spoke. His long tail swished behind him, showing his excitement. The translator device around his neck turned his hissing words into standard galactic language. "Fellow council members," Kethvar began, his voice carrying across the massive chamber, "we are here to address a serious threat to galactic peace. The species called humans has violated our most sacred laws." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled aliens. Some nodded their heads, others flashed colored lights, and a few released puffs of scented gas. All showed they agreed with the Zephyrian's words. Kethvar activated a holographic display above his head. Images appeared showing star maps with red marks scattered across them. "Look at this evidence," he said, pointing at the red dots. "In just 50 years, humans have spread to 12 different star systems. They built colonies without asking permission. They ignored our mining claims. They traded with species that are not part of our council." The display changed to show human ships, blocky, ugly vessels that looked more like flying boxes than the sleek, beautiful craft the aliens preferred. Several council members made sounds of disgust at the crude human designs. "Worse," Kethvar continued, "they refused to acknowledge our authority. When we sent official messages telling them to stop, they sent back polite replies saying they would consider our concerns, as if the Galactic Council's commands were mere suggestions. This brought louder sounds of outrage from the assembled aliens. The crystalline Vorth delegate flashed angry red patterns across her transparent body. The insect-like supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed so loudly that several nearby species had to cover their hearing organs. At the defendants' table sat 3 humans. They looked so small compared to the towering aliens around them. Ambassador Sarah Chen wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank. Her 2 security escorts looked equally plain in their gray clothes. They carried no visible weapons and showed no signs of fear, despite being surrounded by representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Chen was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and calm eyes. She sat quietly, hands folded, watching the alien proceedings with the patience of someone who had expected this moment. Her face showed no anger at the accusations, no fear at being outnumbered, no surprise at the hostile reception. "Look at them," whispered the delegate from the aquatic collective to his neighbor, his gills fluttering with amusement. 3 representatives for an entire species, and they came in what? A cargo hauler? Indeed, the human delegation had arrived in a single ship that looked more suited for moving goods than carrying diplomats. It sat in the station's docking bay like a rusty old truck parked next to sports cars. The aliens had laughed when they first saw it. Chief Counselor Veltarn raised his 6 arms for silence. He was ancient, even by his species' standards. His purple skin marked with the ritual scars of countless diplomatic victories. His deep voice commanded respect from every member of the council. "The humans will now present their defense," Veltarn announced, "though I suspect there is little they can say to excuse their behavior." Ambassador Chen rose from her chair. She was not tall by human standards, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, "Earth extends its greetings to all your worlds and peoples. We come here today seeking understanding and peaceful resolution to what appears to be a misunderstanding." Several aliens made sounds that the translators rendered as laughter. The idea that the humans could dismiss the Council's charges as a misunderstanding struck them as absurd. We were not aware that the systems we colonized were under Council jurisdiction, Chen continued. Earth had no contact with galactic civilization until recently. Our expansion was driven by necessity. Our home world's population was growing, and we needed new places for our people to live. Ignorance is no excuse, interrupted the Nathari delegate, releasing a cloud of chemicals that smelled like sulfur and indicated disdain. Every spacefaring species learns of the Council before leaving their home system. Your people chose to ignore us. Chen nodded politely. That may be true for species that developed faster than light travel in regions where the Council was already established. Earth's first FTL ships went in directions where we encountered no other intelligent life for many years. By the time we learned of your existence, we had already established colonies to support our people. And the trading? Kethvar demanded. You have made agreements with the Outer Rim species that we specifically excluded from galactic commerce due to their violent tendencies. We found them to be reasonable trading partners, Chen replied. Perhaps their reputation does not match their current behavior. This brought more sounds of alien amusement. The idea that humans, clearly a primitive species, could judge the character of aliens that the Council had deemed dangerous was laughable. The Vorth delegate's crystalline body flashed with condescending patterns. You speak of necessity and misunderstanding, her musical voice chimed, but you offer nothing to make up for your crimes. What can your species possibly give us that would justify allowing you to keep what you have stolen? Chen looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many alien representatives as possible. We offer friendship, trade, and knowledge. Our scientists have developed some technologies that might interest you. Our artists create works that could bring beauty to your worlds. Our farmers have learned to grow food in harsh conditions. The laughter that followed was loud enough to make the chamber's acoustic systems strain. The idea that humans, who had barely mastered space travel, could offer anything of value to civilizations thousands of years more advanced was ridiculous. Technology? The supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed with amusement. Her mental voice projected through speakers around the chamber. We have observed your ships, human. They are crude, inefficient, and centuries behind our own designs. Your weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles. Your power systems are barely more advanced than controlled combustion. Knowledge? The aquatic collective's delegate gurgled with mirth. We have been studying the cosmos for longer than your species has existed. What could you possibly teach us? Art and food? Kethvar's scales shifted to colors indicating mockery. We have access to the cultural heritage of 200 species. We can synthesize any organic compound with perfect precision. Your offerings are not just unnecessary, they are inferior to what we already possess. Chen listened to each criticism without changing expression. When the laughter died down, she spoke again. I understand your skepticism, she said. From your perspective, we must seem like children who have wandered into an adult gathering. But perhaps there is wisdom in approaching this situation with patience rather than judgment. Patience? Veltarn's ancient voice carried a note of irritation. Human, your species has had 50 years to contact us properly. Instead, you chose to ignore galactic law and expand without permission. The time for patience has passed. The Chief Counselor activated another display, this one showing the Council's military forces. Massive ships filled the screen, kilometer-long dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that could crack planets, carrier vessels launching clouds of fighter craft, support ships that could maintain a siege for years. Behold the combined fleet, Veltarn announced. 10,437 vessels representing the military might of 200 worlds. We have used this fleet to bring peace to dozens of aggressive species. We have ended wars, stopped invasions, and maintained galactic stability for over 1,000 years. The display zoomed in on individual ships, showing weapon systems that could melt continents and shields that could withstand the fury of stars. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. "Your options are simple," Kethvar said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been refused. "Withdraw from all systems beyond your home world within 1 standard year. Submit to Council oversight of your remaining activities. Accept limits on your space travel that will prevent future violations." "And if we refuse?" Chen asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to fade as every alien representative focused on the human woman's calm question. "Then you will be removed by force," Kethvar replied, his scales shifting to aggressive war colors. "The Council has never failed to enforce its will, human. We have the largest, most advanced fleet in the galaxy. We have weapons your people cannot imagine and defenses your primitive technology cannot breach." Several alien delegates made sounds of agreement. The display continued showing Council ships, each one larger and more impressive than anything humans had built. "What could your single world possibly do against us?" the Vorth delegate chimed mockingly. "You have perhaps a few hundred ships? We have seen your orbital defenses. They are adequate for defending against asteroids and space debris, but not against a serious military force." Chen reached for the communication device on her wrist. The simple gesture drew the attention of every being in the chamber. "Captain Morrison," she said into the device, "are you receiving this transmission?" A new voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. It was female with a slight accent that sounded different from Chen's refined diplomatic tones. "Loud and clear, Ambassador," the voice replied. "I've been monitoring the entire proceeding. These Council folks sure have some impressive ships." More alien laughter filled the chamber. The idea that humans were impressed by Council technology was exactly what they expected from a primitive species. "Captain, please transmit our response to the Council's generous offer," Chen said, her tone remaining perfectly diplomatic. "Roger. That, ma'am. Preparing to show our diplomatic position." A new holographic display materialized above the chamber, replacing the images of Council ships. This one showed the human vessel docked at Concordia Prime, the same ungainly cargo hauler that had brought the diplomatic team. It looked even more pathetic next to the sleek alien ships in the nearby docking bays. "Is this supposed to impress us?" Kethvar hissed, his amusement clear. "Your cargo ship against our battle fleet?" "Just watch," Chen said softly. On the display, the human ship's cargo bay doors began to open slowly. The aliens leaned forward in their seats, expecting to see some desperate show of defiance. Perhaps a single missile or a ramming attempt by fanatics who preferred death to surrender. Instead, something impossible happened. Ships began emerging from the cargo bay, not small fighter craft or shuttles, but full-sized vessels that had somehow been packed inside what everyone thought was a simple transport. They unfolded like mechanical flowers, expanding from compressed storage configurations into sleek, predatory shapes. One ship became two became four became 8. The multiplication continued as more and more vessels emerged from spaces that should not have been able to contain them. The alien laughter died as if someone had thrown a switch. Within minutes, a complete battle fleet surrounded Concordia Prime. Dozens of human ships hung in space around the diplomatic station, their clean lines and efficient designs a sharp contrast to the boxy cargo hauler that had concealed them. "Impossible," whispered the aquatic collective delegate, his gills fluttering in shock. "Our sensors detected only one ship. Our intelligence reports showed humans possessed no significant fleet." Chen's expression remained diplomatic, but now there was something else in her eyes. Something that made several alien representatives unconsciously lean back in their chairs. "You assumed we would advertise our capabilities to potential enemies," she said quietly. "That assumption was unwise." The silence in the chamber was complete, except for the sound of alien breathing. organs working faster as stress responses kicked in across multiple species. Outside, the human fleet continued to deploy, their ships taking defensive positions around the station with the precision of a long-practiced maneuver. It was clear this was not a desperate improvisation. It was a carefully planned operation. "Captain Morrison," Chen said into her communicator, "please introduce yourself to our new friends." The voice that came through the speakers now carried a different tone, still respectful, but with an edge that had not been there before. "Honorable Council members, I'm Captain Lisa Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. The ship you've been commenting on is the UES Trojan Horse. Yes, we named it that deliberately. It's our diplomatic courier vessel, designed to carry our actual negotiation tools while appearing harmless to hostile forces." The irony was not lost on the assembled aliens. They had been so busy laughing at human primitiveness that they had walked straight into the oldest trick in Earth's military history. The display changed again, showing the true scope of the human deployment. What had seemed like dozens of ships was actually hundreds, spreading out from the station in a complex formation that spoke of advanced tactical doctrine. "Questions, anyone?" Morrison asked pleasantly. The silence in the council chamber stretched like a held breath. Outside the massive viewing windows, human ships continued their deployment, their movements coordinated with military precision. The aliens who had been laughing moments before now stared at displays showing sensor readings that made no sense. Chief Counselor Veltarn was the first to find his voice. His 6 arms trembled slightly as he activated his personal scanner, checking the readings again and again. "Explain this deception," he demanded, his ancient authority wavering for the first time in centuries. "Our instruments detected a single vessel. Our intelligence networks reported humans possessed no significant military force." Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication system with calm professionalism. "With respect, Counselor, your instruments detected exactly what they were designed to find. One ship with the energy signature and mass readings of a cargo hauler. Your intelligence networks found exactly what we wanted them to find, the Vorth. Delegate's crystalline form flickered through rapid color changes, the equivalent of hyperventilation. This violates every principle of honest diplomatic contact. You came here under false pretenses." Ambassador Chen stood, her hands still folded, calmly despite the chaos her revelation had caused. "We came here exactly as invited. A diplomatic mission seeking peaceful resolution. The fact that we prepared for the possibility of your refusal to negotiate does not change our sincere desire for agreement." "Prepared?" Kethvar's scales had shifted to deep red, a color his species displayed only when facing mortal danger. "You call military deception preparation?" "We call survival planning wisdom," Chen replied. "Your own intelligence reports about humanity should have mentioned our history. We are a species that has learned to hope for the best while preparing for the worst." Morrison's voice added context through the speakers. "Council members, I recommend you examine your own protocols. When the Krex first contacted the galaxy, they brought 12 hive ships to their diplomatic meeting. When the Zephyrians joined the Council, they positioned a battle fleet just outside the system as a precaution. Every species shows strength during first contact. We simply chose to be less obvious about it. The supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed with agitation, her mental voice projected with sharp harmonics. Those were different situations. We were dealing with known quantities, established civilizations. You are an unknown species from outside Council space. Exactly why we exercised caution, Chen said. We knew nothing about your intentions except what we could observe. And what we observed was a collection of powerful civilizations that had a history of using force to solve problems. Force? The Nathari delegate released a cloud of chemicals that smelled like indignation. The Council maintains peace. We have ended wars, not started them. Chen activated her own display, showing historical records that made several aliens shift uncomfortably. the pacification of the Outer Rim, the correction of the rebel systems, the integration of the stubborn worlds. These are your own terms for military actions against species that refused Council authority. Those were necessary interventions, Veltarn said, but his voice carried less conviction than before. Dangerous species that threatened galactic stability. Species very much like humanity, in fact, Morrison observed. Independent worlds that had expanded without Council permission and refused to submit to outside authority. The pattern seemed clear to us. The display changed to show detailed analyses of past Council military actions. Human intelligence had been thorough. They knew casualty figures, tactical approaches, and outcomes for dozens of interventions over the past 1,000 years. You have been spying on us, the aquatic collective delegate accused, water streaming from his gills in distress. We have been learning about our neighbors, Chen corrected. Just as I am certain you have been observing humanity since we achieved faster-than-light travel. The difference is that we were more careful about hiding our activities, Kethvar activated his own scanner, trying to get accurate readings of the human fleet. The numbers that came back made his tail lash with anxiety. Our sensors are showing. This cannot be correct. The energy signatures suggest your ships are individually more powerful than our standard cruisers. Your sensors are working fine, Morrison confirmed. We've had the advantage of studying your technology for decades before revealing ourselves. Our ships are designed specifically to counter the weapons and defenses we observed in use by Council forces. This admission sent shockwaves through the assembled aliens. The idea that a primitive species had been secretly studying and preparing countermeasures against Council technology was deeply unsettling. The Vorth delegate's crystalline body flashed urgent patterns. How many ships do you actually possess? Our intelligence estimated perhaps 200 vessels for your entire species. Chen and Morrison exchanged glances that somehow carried across the communication link. There was something in that look that made several Council members lean forward. With dread, our active fleet numbers approximately 1,200 combat vessels, Morrison said. But that number is less important than our manufacturing capability. Manufacturing? Veltarn's voice cracked slightly. You mean construction facilities? We mean the ability to build more ships, Chen said simply. The Council's approach to maintaining order relies on having a larger fleet than any potential enemy. It's an effective strategy when dealing with species that build ships the same way you do. The display changed again, showing images that made no immediate sense to the alien observers. Strange structures hung in space, their purposes unclear but their scale enormous. What are those? The Krek's supreme hive mind demanded. Mobile construction platforms, Morrison replied. We call them factory ships. Each one can produce finished vessels from raw materials in approximately 4 months, depending on the size and complexity of the design. The implications hit the Council members like a physical blow. If humans could manufacture ships quickly in space, their numerical disadvantage could be temporary. How many of these factory ships do you operate? Kethvar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Currently, 17 are fully operational, Morrison said. But like our combat vessels, that number is less important than the principle. Each factory ship can build more factory ships. The chamber erupted in panicked communications. Aliens turned to each other, speaking in rapid bursts of their native languages as the translators struggled to keep up. The concept of exponential manufacturing growth was clearly familiar to them and clearly terrifying. You're describing unlimited expansion, the Nathari delegate said through a cloud of chemicals that smelled like fear. Uncontrolled replication of military assets. Controlled. Replication, Chen corrected firmly. Very carefully controlled. We learned restraint along with capability. But yes, our industrial philosophy differs from yours. Veltarn struggled to regain his composure, drawing on centuries of diplomatic experience. Even with manufacturing advantages, you cannot seriously believe you could challenge the combined might of 200 worlds. The Council commands resources from across the galaxy. Resources that must be transported across vast distances, Morrison observed. Resources that follow predictable shipping routes we've been mapping for decades. Resources that depend on infrastructure that, well, let's say we know where everything is. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as the full scope of human preparation became clear. They hadn't just been building ships. They had been studying the entire Council infrastructure, learning its weaknesses, preparing for a war that might never come but could start at any moment. "This is madness," the Vorth delegate chimed, her crystal body flickering erratically. "You are one species against 200. Even with advantages, the mathematics do not support victory." Chen's expression remained calm, but something in her eyes had changed. The diplomatic mask was still in place, but underneath it was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "Honored delegate, you are thinking about this situation incorrectly. You assume this would be a war between humanity and the Council, with victory going to whoever destroys more ships or conquers more worlds." "What else would it be?" Cathvar demanded. "It would be a war between a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of survival, and a collection of civilizations that have forgotten what survival actually means." The words hung in the air like a threat. Several council members exchanged worried glances as they tried to understand what the human was implying. Morrison's voice added weight to Chen's statement. "Council members, I want you to consider something. In your recorded history, how many of your wars have ended with the complete extinction of one side? That is not how civilized warfare works," the Aquatic Collective delegate stammered. "Wars end with surrender, negotiation, terms of peace." "Exactly," Morrison said. "You fight wars with the expectation that both sides will survive to negotiate afterward. Your weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy. Your tactics prioritize minimizing casualties over ensuring victory. Because that is how intelligent species behave." The supreme hive mind buzzed indignantly. "Because that is how species that have forgotten desperation behave," Chen corrected. "Humanity learned warfare in an environment where defeat meant extinction. Every war in our history has been fought with the understanding that the loser might not survive to surrender." The display changed to show images from Earth's history. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, orbital bombardment platforms. The aliens recoiled from the casual documentation of humanity's capacity for total destruction. "We don't want to fight you," Chen continued. "We came here hoping for peace, friendship, and mutual benefit. But if you force us into a war, it will not be the kind of civilized conflict you are accustomed to." "Are you threatening us?" Veltarn asked, his ancient voice carrying a note of disbelief. "We are explaining the consequences of your choices," Morrison replied. "If the Council decides that humanity must be removed by force, we will defend ourselves with every capability we possess. That includes capabilities you have never seen used in galactic warfare." The chamber fell silent except for the sound of alien breathing and the subtle hum of life support systems working harder to manage the stress-induced changes in atmospheric composition. Cathvar was the first to speak, his voice hoarse with realization. "You are saying you would fight a total war, complete destruction rather than surrender." "We are saying we know how to fight wars where survival is more important than civilization," Chen said quietly. "We hope never to use that knowledge. But we will not be exterminated because other species find our existence inconvenient." The implications settled over the Council like a cold weight. Everything they thought they knew about humanity had been wrong. The primitive, naive species they had planned to easily intimidate was actually a carefully concealed military power that had been studying them for decades. Worse, it was a species that approached warfare with a philosophy the Council had never encountered, one where victory mattered more than preserving the rules of civilized conflict. "What do you want from us?" Veltarn finally asked, his 6 arms trembling with age and stress. Ambassador Chen's diplomatic composure returned, but now it carried the weight of unveiled capabilities. "The same thing we wanted when this meeting began, honored counselor. Recognition as an equal partner in galactic civilization, fair treatment in trade and territorial disputes, the right to exist without submitting to outside control." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The difference is that now you understand what equality means when dealing with humanity. We don't want to be your subjects or your enemies. We want to be your equals. But equality requires respect, and respect sometimes requires understanding the cost of disrespect." The silence that followed was broken by the soft chime of an incoming message. Morrison's voice carried a new tone, not threatening, but businesslike, in a way that was somehow more unsettling than open hostility. "Ambassador, we're receiving multiple transmission requests from Council worlds. It appears word of our diplomatic capabilities is spreading." Chen nodded, unsurprised. "Thank you, Captain. Please extend our compliments to all interested parties and remind them that Earth remains committed to peaceful resolution of all disputes." She turned back to the Council, her expression once again that of a hopeful diplomat seeking friendship. "So, honored members, shall we begin actual negotiations? Because I assure you, humanity much prefers building relationships to breaking things. But we are prepared for either." 3 hours had passed since the humans revealed their hidden fleet. The Council chamber buzzed with urgent conversations as alien delegates tried to process what they had learned. Emergency communications flashed between representatives and their home worlds, while military advisors whispered increasingly desperate assessments into their superiors' ears. Chief Counselor Veltarn called for order, his 6 arms moving in the ancient gestures of diplomatic authority. But for the first time in his long career, he felt the weight of genuine uncertainty. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for 1,000 years had shifted in the span of minutes. "The Council will recess for deliberation," he announced. "We will reconvene in 2 hours to address new information." As the alien delegates filed out in worried clusters, Ambassador Chen remained at her table, calmly reviewing notes on her datapad. Her security escorts showed no signs of stress, no indication that they had just participated in one of the most dramatic revelations in galactic diplomatic history. The Zephyrian delegate Kethvar approached her table, his scales now showing the neutral gray of deep thought rather than the aggressive reds of earlier. His tail moved in slow, measured sweeps, a sign of careful consideration among his people. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his translator rendering his hissing speech in formal tones. "May I speak with you privately?" Chen looked up from her notes, her expression politely interested. "Of course, Ambassador Kethvar. Though I should mention that our conversation will likely be monitored by various intelligence services." Kethvar's scales flickered with what might have been amusement. "Indeed, privacy is a rare commodity in diplomatic circles." He settled into a chair designed for his reptilian physique. "I am curious about something. Your species planned this reveal very carefully. Why now? Why reveal your capabilities during a disciplinary hearing rather than, say, a formal first contact ceremony?" Chen set down her datapad and gave the question serious consideration. "Because formal ceremonies are performances. Everyone plays their expected role, says their expected lines, and reaches expected conclusions. This situation required honesty." "Honesty?" Kethvar's translator struggled with the concept as applied to military deception. "You concealed a battle fleet and call it honesty?" We concealed our capabilities while revealing our intentions, Chen corrected. We came here genuinely seeking peace. The fleet was insurance, not a first choice. Through the chamber's viewing windows, both diplomats could see human ships maintaining their positions around Concordia Prime. The vessels moved with the casual efficiency of a well-trained force, their crews clearly comfortable with their equipment and roles. Your Captain Morrison, Kethvar continued. She speaks of humanity's industrial capabilities as if ship construction were as simple as manufacturing household goods. Surely this is exaggeration. Chen's smile carried genuine warmth. Captain Morrison has a tendency toward understatement, actually. She's from our mining colonies, places where building whatever you need from available materials isn't impressive engineering, just daily survival. This casual admission made Kethvar's scales shift toward worried yellows. If the human military commander considered rapid ship construction unremarkable, what did that suggest about their actual capabilities? Meanwhile, in the Council's private deliberation chambers, heated arguments erupted between representatives of different species. The Vorth delegate's crystalline form flashed rapid patterns of agitation as she addressed her colleagues. The mathematical implications are catastrophic, she chimed urgently. If humans can construct ships at the rate they claim, numerical superiority becomes meaningless. Worse, if they can produce manufacturing platforms exponentially, they could theoretically outbuild the combined industrial capacity of the entire Council within a decade. The supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed agreement, her mental voice carrying the harmonized thoughts of billions. The hive concurs. Traditional warfare doctrine assumes limited production capacity for all participants. Humans appear to have eliminated this limitation. But they are still one species, insisted the Nathari delegate through clouds of chemical communication. Regardless of production capacity, they lack the raw materials and energy sources available to a 200-world alliance. The Aquatic Collective's representative gurgled disagreement. Their factory ships suggest they can process asteroid fields and dead planets into industrial resources. Raw materials may not be as limiting as we assume. Chief Counselor Veltarn listened to the arguments with growing dread. Each point raised by his colleagues revealed another assumption about warfare that humanity had apparently discarded. The careful mathematical balance that made Council military doctrine work was based on shared limitations that the humans did not seem to acknowledge. There is another factor we must consider, he said finally. Their approach to conflict resolution. Ambassador Chen was quite specific. Humanity learned warfare as a matter of species survival, not political control. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every Council species had developed space travel after establishing planetary unity and peace. Their wars were political tools, ways of adjusting territorial boundaries and resource allocation, without causing excessive destruction. The idea of war as existential struggle was foreign to their experience. Surely they cannot be serious about total warfare, the Vorth delegate flashed hopefully. No species would actually risk complete mutual destruction over territorial disputes. Humans would, said a new voice from the chamber's communication system. The assembled delegates turned to see a holographic projection of Admiral Zix Ara, the Council's supreme military commander. Her four-armed insectoid form was scarred from centuries of service, and her compound eyes reflected the tactical genius that had never lost a battle. Admiral, Veltarn acknowledged. Your assessment? I have been reviewing human historical records since their revelation. Zixara clicked, her mandibles moving in patterns that indicated deep concern. Their species has fought wars where entire populations were deliberately targeted. They have used weapons designed to make vast areas uninhabitable. They have continued fighting even when victory became impossible, simply to inflict maximum damage on their enemies. The delegates exchanged worried glances. This was not the behavior of rational, civilized beings. More importantly, the Admiral continued, their current fleet composition confirms their philosophy. Our ships are designed for territorial control. We build vessels that can occupy systems, maintain blockades, and project power over time. Human ships are designed for destruction. Their weapons are built to eliminate targets completely. Their armor is designed to survive while accomplishing mission objectives, not to preserve the vessel for future operations. Are you saying they cannot be defeated? Kethvar asked, his voice tight with stress. I am saying they cannot be defeated the way we have defeated other species, Zixara replied. They do not share our assumptions about acceptable losses or reasonable outcomes. A war with humanity would not end with surrender and negotiation. It would end with the extinction of one side or the other. Back in the main chamber, Chen had returned to her notes while Kethvar processed what he had learned. The Zephyrian delegate found himself studying the human woman with new eyes. She looked so ordinary, middle-aged, quietly dressed, unremarkable by any galactic standard. Yet she represented a species that had apparently spent decades preparing for a war they hoped never to fight. Ambassador, he said carefully, may I ask what outcome humanity prefers from today's negotiations? Chen looked up, her expression brightening with genuine enthusiasm. Partnership, she said immediately. Trade agreements that benefit everyone. Cultural exchange programs. Joint scientific research projects. Shared exploration of unexplored regions. And if the Council refuses? The enthusiasm didn't fade, but something harder joined it in Chen's eyes. Then we'll continue existing as we have been, expanding carefully, building quietly, preparing for whatever comes next, even if that means war? Especially if that means war, Chen said quietly. Kethvar, may I share something with you? Something that might help you understand humanity's position? The Zephyrian nodded, his scales showing attentive patterns. My grandfather fought in the last global war on Earth, Chen began. The weapons of that time could have destroyed all life on our planet. Everyone knew this. The politicians, the military leaders, the ordinary citizens, everyone understood that the war might end human civilization. Yet they fought anyway. They fought anyway, because the alternative was surrender to enemies who would have enslaved or exterminated those they conquered. When survival is at stake, rational cost-benefit analysis becomes irrelevant. Kethvar's tail curled with anxiety as he processed this information. You are saying humanity would rather die fighting than live under Council authority? I'm saying humanity has experience with situations where those were the only choices available, Chen corrected. We hope that wisdom and mutual benefit will provide better options, but we won't pretend those better options exist if they don't. At that moment, Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the chamber's communication system, though she was addressing someone else. Admiral Torres, please deploy sensor platforms around the primary asteroid belt. We want comprehensive mapping of available resources. Chen activated her communicator. Captain, you're on an open channel. Oops, Morrison replied, though she didn't sound particularly embarrassed. Sorry about that, Ambassador. Just coordinating some routine surveys. Kethvar's scales shifted to alarmed yellows. Surveys? Of our asteroid belt? Standard procedure when entering a new system, Morrison explained casually. We like to know what's available in case we need to extend our stay. The implications were clear to anyone familiar with human manufacturing capabilities. If they could process asteroids into ships, surveying local resources was preparation for a potential siege. Chen smiled apologetically at Kethvar. Captain Morrison is very thorough about logistics planning. It's one of her most valuable qualities. Deliberations in the Council's private chambers had grown more heated as the full scope of the situation became clear. Admiral Zixara's tactical assessment had shattered any illusions about humanity being a manageable threat. We must consider the precedent this sets, the Nathari delegate insisted, his chemical emissions now smelling of desperate urgency. If We allow humans to retain territory gained through unauthorized expansion. What prevents other species from following their example? If we attempt to force human compliance and fail, what prevents other species from concluding the Council is ineffective? Countered the fourth delegate. Chief Counselor Veltarn raised his arms for attention. The core question remains: can we coexist with a species that refuses to acknowledge our authority? The better question, Admiral Zixara interjected, is whether we can afford not to coexist with them. Based on my analysis, a war with humanity would cost us approximately 40% of our combined fleet, even if we achieved complete victory. The economic disruption would destabilize half the galaxy. And if we lose? Kethvar asked quietly. If we lose, the galactic political structure that has maintained peace for a millennium will collapse. Other species will conclude that Council authority can be challenged successfully. We will face decades of territorial wars and expansion conflicts. The silence that followed was broken by an incoming priority message. The Chamber's communication system activated automatically to receive emergency transmissions. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," the human voice announced calmly. "Council members, we are detecting massive fleet movements toward Concordia Prime from multiple directions. We wanted to assure you that we interpret these movements as precautionary rather than aggressive." Several delegates looked confused by this unexpected courtesy. Morrison continued. "However, in the interest of avoiding misunderstandings, we are activating additional defensive measures. Please do not be alarmed by what you observe over the next few minutes." The viewing windows of the Council chamber suddenly filled with light as space around Concordia Prime began to change. What had appeared to be empty void now revealed massive structures materializing as if emerging from invisibility. Weapons platforms, shield generators, manufacturing facilities, an entire military infrastructure that had somehow been hidden from the galaxy's most advanced sensor networks. The human fleet that had seemed impressive an hour ago was actually just the visible tip of a much larger force. As cloaking systems deactivated across the region, the true scope of human preparation became apparent. They had not just brought a fleet to the negotiations, they had built a fortress around them. "Questions?" Morrison asked pleasantly, as if massive military installations appearing from nowhere were routine diplomatic tools. Chief Counselor Veltarn stared out at the impossible sight, his 6 arms trembling with the realization that everything his civilization thought it knew about warfare had just become obsolete. "How?" he whispered. "Very carefully," Morrison replied, "and with lots of advanced planning." The Council chamber had fallen into stunned silence as delegates stared out at the impossible sight surrounding them. What had been empty space an hour ago now bristled with human military installations, weapons platforms the size of city blocks, hung motionless in the void, their surfaces dark but clearly active. Shield generators created shimmering barriers of energy that would make the station nearly impossible to attack. Manufacturing stations, barely visible in the distance, suggested that the humans could build even more defenses while negotiations continued. Chief Counselor Veltarn was the first to find his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "How long have those been there?" Captain Morrison's voice carried through the communication system with casual professionalism. "The initial stealth platforms were positioned approximately 6 months ago. We've been expanding the network gradually." "Ever since 6 months?" The fourth delegate's crystalline form flashed erratic patterns of disbelief. "You have been building military installations in our space for 6 months without detection?" "With respect," Morrison replied, "this is neutral space, administered jointly by multiple Council species. We followed all posted regulations about construction permits and environmental impact assessments. The absurdity of bureaucratic compliance in the face of massive military deception might have been funny under different circumstances." Several delegates looked as if they were reconsidering everything they thought they knew about both human capabilities, and their own security procedures. Ambassador Chen activated her communicator. Captain, perhaps you could explain to our hosts how this construction was possible without triggering sensor alerts? Certainly, Ambassador. Morrison's tone suggested she was enjoying the opportunity to educate. Council species have excellent sensor technology, but it's designed to detect threats that behave like Council threats. Your scanners look for large masses moving at high speed, energy signatures from weapons and drives, and communication patterns between coordinated vessels. The display screens around the chamber lit up with technical schematics that made several military advisors lean forward with professional interest. Our installations were built using a different approach, Morrison continued. Small components, transported individually by automated cargo drones. Each piece has the signature of industrial equipment rather than weapons. Assembly was performed by robotic systems that work slowly to avoid creating heat or electromagnetic signatures. Admiral Zixara's holographic image flickered as she processed this information. You disguised military construction as commercial activity? We disguised military preparation as routine maintenance and supply operations, Morrison corrected. Every installation out there was built using techniques that would be familiar to any asteroid mining operation or deep space construction project. Kethvar's scales had shifted to deep purples, colors his species showed only when facing existential threats. You have been planning for war while speaking of peace. Chen stood, her diplomatic composure intact despite the chaos her revelation had caused. Ambassador Kethvar, we have been planning for the possibility of war while working toward peace. There is an important difference. She activated her own display, showing images from human history that made several aliens recoil. Cities destroyed by warfare, populations scattered by conflict, entire civilizations reduced to ruins because they had trusted in the good intentions of others. Humanity learned a difficult lesson over many centuries, Chen said quietly. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We came here hoping to find friends and allies, but we also prepared for the possibility that we would find enemies. And which have you found? Chief Counselor Veltarn asked, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 1,000 years of diplomatic experience. Chen looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. That remains to be determined by your response to our presence here. The Nathari delegate released a cloud of chemicals that the translators rendered as frustrated confusion. You speak in riddles. Are you threatening us or requesting friendship? We are explaining reality, Morrison interjected from the communication system. Humanity exists. We will continue to exist. The question is whether that existence will be as allies, neutral neighbors, or enemies. The choice is yours, but the consequences belong to all of us. At that moment, new alarms began sounding throughout Concordia Prime. The station's security systems had finally detected the massive changes in their local environment. Emergency lights flashed as automated systems tried to process sensor readings that made no sense according to their programmed parameters. Perhaps we should address the immediate situation, Chen suggested calmly. Station Control, this is Ambassador Chen. The installations you are detecting are defensive in nature and pose no threat to Concordia Prime or its inhabitants. However, I recommend updating your security protocols to account for advanced stealth technology. The voice that came through the station's communication system belonged to Station Commander Yulden, a six-armed hexapod who had managed diplomatic facilities for over 2 decades. Ambassador Chen, our sensors are showing weapons platforms with enough firepower to destroy this entire station. In what universe do you consider that defensive? In the universe where those platforms prevent anyone from attacking the station, while negotiations are in progress, Morrison replied before Chen could respond. Commander, I give you my personal guarantee that no human weapon will be fired except in defense of human personnel or in response to hostile action against this facility. Your guarantee? Yulden's voice carried the strain of someone dealing with a situation beyond his experience. What value does that have when you have surrounded us with enough firepower to slag a planet? Chen's expression showed genuine sympathy for the station commander's position. Commander Yulden, may I ask what protection this station normally has during high-level diplomatic meetings? The Council maintains a security fleet of approximately 50 vessels for such occasions. And where is that fleet now? A pause. They were recalled to defensive positions when your fleet was detected. So the station's normal protection was removed when Council forces decided they might need to fight us, Morrison observed. Our installations are providing the security that would normally be supplied by Council ships. The logic was sound, but several delegates looked uncomfortable with the idea that human weapons were now responsible for their safety. This is intolerable. The supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed angrily. You have manipulated the entire situation to place us at your mercy while claiming peaceful intentions. Chen's diplomatic mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. Hive mind Zarathek, with respect, we are not the ones who called this meeting. We did not demand that humanity justify its existence to galactic civilization. We did not threaten military action if our demands were not met. She gestured toward the viewing windows where human installations hung in space like mechanical stars. What you see out there is our response to your ultimatum. You offered us a choice between submission and destruction. We have chosen a third option: survival with dignity. The chamber erupted in angry alien voices as delegates tried to respond to this characterization of their actions. Translators struggled to keep up with the rapid-fire exchanges in dozens of languages. Veltarn raised his 6 arms for silence, drawing on centuries of experience managing diplomatic crises. Ambassador Chen, the Council's position was not unreasonable. Galactic law exists to prevent exactly the kind of unauthorized expansion your species has engaged in. Laws that we had no opportunity to learn about because no one bothered to contact us until after we had supposedly broken them, Chen replied. Laws that seemed designed to prevent exactly the kind of rapid development that allowed us to survive on a hostile world. Morrison's voice added support from the communication system. Counselor Veltarn, I've been reviewing your legal precedents during this discussion. In every case where the Council has granted exemptions or special status, the requesting species possessed significant military capabilities. The warrior poets of Andromeda, the crystal singers of the nebular region, the machine states of the outer spiral, all of them negotiated from positions of strength. Those were different circumstances, Kethvar protested, his scales shifting, through colors that indicated deep discomfort. Different how? Morrison asked. Each species had capabilities that made them expensive to fight. Each species offered benefits that made accommodation preferable to conflict. Each species demonstrated that attempting to impose counsel would be more costly than negotiating mutually acceptable terms. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Zixara's tactical assessment. The pattern is clear, she clicked reluctantly. The Council has always respected strength while demanding submission from weakness. Humans have simply revealed that they are not weak. Chen nodded acknowledgement to the Admiral. We studied your history carefully before revealing ourselves. We learned that galactic civilization respects capability and negotiates with equals. We prepared to be equals. At what cost? The Aquatic Collective delegate gurgled. You have militarized an entire region of space. You have demonstrated technologies that could destabilize the galactic balance of power. You have shown that stealth capabilities we thought impossible are routine for your species. The cost of preparing for peace, Morrison said simply, because the alternative, being unprepared for war, would have been infinitely more expensive. At that moment, priority alerts began flashing on communication panels throughout the chamber. Incoming messages from Council homeworlds, military commands, and intelligence services flooded the station's systems as word of humanity's capabilities spread throughout galactic civilization. Veltarn activated his personal communicator, scanning, through diplomatic traffic that was arriving faster than his staff could process. Emergency sessions were being called on dozens of worlds. Military leaders were demanding immediate tactical assessments. Intelligence services were beginning crash programs to understand how their surveillance networks had been completely bypassed. "The galaxy is in chaos," he announced to the chamber. "Every council member world is demanding explanations for how a primitive species managed to build hidden installations throughout our space." Chen's expression showed genuine regret. "We did not intend to cause panic, but we also could not allow our people to be exterminated because other species underestimated our commitment to survival. What happens now?" Kethvar asked, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone whose worldview had been shattered in a single day. Morrison's voice carried a new tone, not threatening, but businesslike in a way that was somehow more unsettling than open hostility. "Now we find out if galactic civilization is mature enough to accept the existence of a species that refuses to be anyone's subject." "And if it is not?" Veltarn asked. The pause before Morrison answered seemed to stretch forever. "Then we find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object," she said quietly. "But I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. War is expensive, destructive, and unpredictable. Peace is profitable, constructive, and allows everyone to focus on building better lives for their people." Chen stood, her hands folded in the diplomatic posture that had begun this entire confrontation. "Honored council members, humanity offers the same thing we offered when this meeting began: partnership, trade, mutual benefit, and respect. The difference is that now you understand what we mean by respect." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or optical sensors, or compound lenses, of every delegate present. "We are not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. We are not your subjects, and we never will be, but we can be your friends, your allies, and your partners in building a galaxy where all species can thrive according to their own values and capabilities." The silence that followed was pregnant with possibility and danger in equal measure. "The choice," Chen said quietly, "is yours, but choose quickly, because every moment this situation remains unresolved increases the risk that someone will do something that cannot be undone." Outside the viewing windows, human installations continued their patient vigil, waiting for the galaxy's decision about humanity's future. The emergency session had been running for 6 hours. Council delegates had contacted their homeworlds, consulted with military advisors, and reviewed intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human capabilities. What had begun as a simple disciplinary hearing had become the most significant diplomatic crisis in galactic history. Chief Counselor Veltarn looked older than his considerable years as he called the session back to order. The weight of a 1,000-year-old civilization's future pressed down on his 6 shoulders as he addressed the assembled representatives. "The Council has completed its deliberations," he announced, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. "We have received input from every member world, consulted with our finest military minds, and reviewed all available intelligence on human capabilities." Ambassador Chen sat quietly at her table, hands folded, expression calm. Her security escorts remained alert but relaxed, showing no signs of anxiety about their species' fate being decided by alien powers. Outside the viewing windows, human installations maintained their silent vigil. The weapons platforms, shield generators, and manufacturing facilities that had appeared from nowhere continued to demonstrate humanity's mastery of technologies the Council thought it understood. "Before we announce our decision," Veltarn continued, "we have questions that must be answered honestly." Chen rose from her chair with diplomatic grace. "The Earth delegation is prepared to answer any questions within the bounds of reasonable operational security." Kethvar activated his personal display, showing sensor readings from across the local region. Our updated scans indicate at least 47 major installations within this system alone. How many similar networks exist throughout Council space? 43 operational staging areas in systems deemed strategically significant, Captain Morrison's voice replied through the communication system. Though throughout Council space might be an overstatement, we focused on locations that would matter if diplomatic solutions failed. The supreme hive mind of the Krex buzzed with controlled agitation. You have been building military infrastructure in our territory for decades without permission or detection. This violates every principle of interstellar law. Chen's expression remained diplomatic, but her voice carried an edge of steel. Hive mind Zara Thek. Interstellar law assumes that all participants agreed to be bound by its provisions. Earth was never consulted about these laws, never invited to participate in their creation, and never offered the opportunity to join the system they were designed to govern. She gestured toward the viewing windows where human ships continued their patrol patterns. We prepared for the possibility that first contact would be hostile because our species has learned that hoping for the best while failing to prepare for the worst leads to extinction. Admiral Zixara's holographic image flickered as she addressed the assembly. From a purely tactical perspective, the humans have demonstrated capabilities that change the fundamental assumptions underlying Council military doctrine. Their stealth technology, manufacturing capacity, and strategic planning represent a level of preparation we have not encountered before. Are they a threat to galactic peace? Veltarn asked directly. The Admiral's compound eyes reflected light patterns that indicated deep consideration. They are a threat to galactic complacency. Whether that translates into a threat to peace depends entirely on how the Council chooses to respond to their existence. The Vorth delegate's crystalline form flashed urgent patterns. If we accommodate human demands, what prevents other species from concluding that military preparation excuses legal violations? The precedent could destabilize the entire galactic order. Chen activated her own display, showing detailed analyses that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Honored delegate, we have studied the precedents carefully. The Council has granted special status to 17 different species based on their unique capabilities or circumstances. The warrior poets received exemptions from standard colonization limits due to their military traditions. The crystal singers were allowed to maintain closed borders because their technology was deemed too dangerous to share. The machine states negotiated special trade agreements because their manufacturing capabilities were considered strategically valuable. Morrison's voice added context. In every case, the Council chose accommodation over conflict when the alternative was expensive or unpredictable warfare. The pattern is clear. Strength commands respect. Weakness invites domination. You compare yourselves to the great powers of galactic civilization, the Nathari delegate said through clouds of chemical communication. But those species demonstrated their capabilities over centuries of peaceful interaction. You revealed yours as threats during a disciplinary hearing. We revealed our capabilities when threatened with extinction, Chen corrected firmly. Ambassador Kethvar explicitly stated that humanity would be removed by force if we did not submit to Council authority. We responded by demonstrating why removal by force would be expensive. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed the implications of humanity's position. They had indeed threatened the humans with military action, and the humans had responded by revealing they were prepared for exactly that scenario. Station Commander Yulden's voice crackled through the communication system, interrupting the tense silence. Council members, we are receiving multiple priority transmissions from across the galaxy. It appears that human installations have been detected in 43 systems simultaneously. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The scope of human preparation was even larger than they had imagined. Impossible, the aquatic collective delegate gurgled. No species possesses the resources to build infrastructure on that scale without detection. Morrison's voice carried a note of professional pride. We've had 73 years since achieving FTL travel, and 58 years since first detecting Council communications. That's a lot of time to prepare when your species' survival depends on getting it right the first time. Chief Counselor Veltarn activated emergency protocols, sealing the chamber and establishing secure communications with Council homeworlds. The scope of human preparation had transformed what seemed like a regional crisis into a galaxy-wide security emergency. This changes everything, he said heavily. If humans have been building hidden installations throughout Council space for decades, we must assume they have intelligence on all our military capabilities, strategic vulnerabilities, and defensive preparations. We do, Morrison confirmed matter-of-factly. Though I should clarify that our intelligence gathering was focused on understanding threats to human colonies and shipping. We weren't planning to invade anyone. We were planning not to be invaded. The distinction was lost on several delegates, who were struggling to process the idea that a supposedly primitive species had been secretly studying galactic civilization with such thoroughness. Admiral Zixara's tactical assessment carried new urgency. Council members, we must face reality. Any military action against humanity would require fighting an enemy that knows our capabilities better than we know theirs, in systems they have spent decades preparing for battle, using technologies we are only beginning to understand. What are our chances of victory? Kethavar asked quietly. The Admiral's pause spoke volumes before she replied. Victory would be possible, but at a cost that might destroy the civilization we are trying to protect. Human manufacturing capabilities and strategic preparation mean that even total victory would require mobilizing the entire Council fleet for what could be decades of warfare. And defeat? Defeat would mean the end of Council authority and the collapse of the galactic order we have maintained for a millennium. The stark assessment silenced the chamber. For the first time in their recorded history, the Council faced an opponent that could not be easily overwhelmed or intimidated into submission. Chen stood, drawing attention back to the Human Delegation. Honored Council members, may I offer a perspective that might help with your deliberations? Veltarn nodded wearily. Speak, Ambassador. You are thinking about this situation as if humanity represents a fundamental threat to galactic civilization. But consider an alternative interpretation. We represent an opportunity to strengthen that civilization. She activated her display, showing images of human colonies, industrial facilities, and exploration vessels. Humanity possesses manufacturing capabilities that could benefit every Council world. Our agricultural techniques could help feed growing populations. Our exploration experience could accelerate the discovery and development of new systems. Our military technologies could enhance the security of all civilized species. Morrison's voice added weight to the diplomatic offer. We're not asking to conquer anyone or impose our values on other species. We're asking for the same thing every Council member enjoys: the right to exist according to our own principles, while contributing to the common good. And if we refuse? The Supreme Hive Mind asked. Chen's diplomatic composure remained intact, but her words carried unmistakable finality. Then humanity will continue to exist according to our own principles, without contributing to the common good. We will, an independent existence, Chen corrected. We have no interest in conquering other species, but we will not be conquered by them either. The distinction was important, but offered little comfort to delegates who were realizing that the galaxy's political landscape had permanently changed. Whether as allies or as an independent power, humanity was now a factor that could not be ignored or easily dismissed. Chief Counselor Veltarn rose, his 6 arms moving in the ancient gestures of formal pronouncement. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. The chamber fell completely silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant vibrations of human ships maintaining their positions around the station. After extensive deliberation, consultation with member worlds, and analysis of all available information, the Council hereby recognizes the sovereignty of the human species and their right to govern their established territories according to their own laws and customs. Several delegates started to protest, but Veltarn's authority silenced them. Furthermore, the Council extends an invitation to humanity to join galactic civilization as a full member species, with all the rights and responsibilities such membership entails. Chen bowed formally, a gesture of respect that somehow managed to acknowledge the offer without indicating submission. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, we accept membership in the Galactic Council with gratitude and commitment to the common welfare of all civilized species. Morrison's voice carried quiet satisfaction. Council members, human vessels are standing down from combat readiness and assuming normal patrol configurations. We look forward to working with you as allies rather than preparing to fight you as enemies. As if choreographed, the human installations visible through the chamber's windows began powering down their weapon systems. The threatening angular shapes of military platforms softened as they reconfigured into civilian infrastructure, communication relays, navigation beacons, and trade facilities. The transition will not be without challenges, Veltarn continued. Integration of human manufacturing capabilities, military doctrine, and social systems will require careful coordination. But the alternative, permanent division between human and council space, would benefit no one. Kethvar's scales showed resigned acceptance as he addressed Chen directly. Ambassador, your species has proven that strength commands respect. In galactic civilization, I hope you will prove equally capable of demonstrating that respect can foster friendship. Chen smiled, and for the first time since the negotiations began, it was entirely genuine. Ambassador Kethvar, humanity has always valued friendship with those who treat us as equals. We look forward to building such relationships throughout the galaxy. 6 months later, the Terran Accords were signed on Concordia Prime, establishing the framework for human integration into galactic civilization. The negotiations had required careful compromises from all parties. Humans accepted limitations on military expansion in exchange for recognized territory and trading rights, while the Council modified its authority structure to accommodate a member species that insisted on maintaining independent military capabilities. The galaxy never again made the mistake of assuming that a desire for peace indicated an inability to wage war, and humanity never again had to prove that civilized behavior was a choice rather than a necessity. The dangerous ship, as it turned out, was not any particular vessel in the human fleet. It was the idea that some species would choose extinction over surrender, victory over accommodation, and independence over security. That idea changed galactic civilization forever.